Welcome to TraumaCast. It's like a podcast, but about trauma. Listen and learn from our team about current trends, new research, and continuing performance improvement efforts. This education is eligible for CNEs. Successful completion includes watching or listening to the entire session and completion of the attestation and evaluation. The link for the evaluation and attestation is located at the end of this video. We hope you enjoy. Please let us know what you think. Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another TraumaCast. As always, we have me and Jen and Liz, and today we're going to talk about the American College of Surgeons, dun dun dun, and what it means to be a level 1 pediatric trauma hospital, and kind of like what goes into it. So if you see the trauma team kind of harping and focusing on specific things, you kind of have a better idea of like the method to the madness. So Jen, what does it mean to be a level 1 pediatric trauma hospital?
Well, in order to be a level 1 pediatric hospital, we have a set of standards that's put forth by the American College of Surgeons. A new set of standards was just published in April of 2022 that we basically have had the last year of starting to implement and basically look at what our program does and do we meet all the new standards. And those standards are anything from clinical guidelines and how we give care to patients to how we do process improvement, nursing education, medical education, the research that's done, how we play in the sandbox with different consulting services. It looks at what the capabilities of the hospital are. It really kind of at the whole program as a whole to make sure that everything we do here at Children's all leads to the optimal outcome of that trauma patient.
And are those guidelines posted for the public?
Yes and no. Okay. Can the public find them? Absolutely, but the public needs to know where to look for them. If you really want to know what the standards are, you could get on the American College of Surgeons website and go under a tab that says quality programs. And under that quality programs, you can look at the standards for any of the American College programs that are out there, whether it's trauma, bariatric, children's surgery. I think there's a few more that are adult-based if you get really interested, but you can pull them that way.
So there's a lot of different verifications, just not trauma.
Yes.
So, are we the oldest?
We are one of the oldest pediatric trauma centers. I don't know who else.
Not us, but like the verification process.
Oh, yes. Trauma is, yeah, that was their first verification process that the American College did. And so because of that, it's probably the most advanced and particular. But kind of go to your question, what I thought you were asking, Cindy, this is actually interesting, is that trauma centers, the adult trauma centers came to be in the early 70s. And the first adult trauma centers were shock trauma in Baltimore and Cook County in Chicago. And then it was in the early to mid 80s is when they looked at separating out pediatric trauma. Because they thought if patients did better going to a trauma center, would the pediatric patient do even better if they went to a trauma center that knew how to take care of kids? And so it was in the late to mid 80s that pediatric trauma centers came to be. And we've been a trauma center here since 1984. So I would guess that we were probably one of the first 10 trauma centers in the country.
So do you just tell the American College of Surgeons, like, yeah, like we do all of these things, we're a trauma center? Or is there a different process? You know, I'm asking. I know the answer to this, but I want to hear you explain it.
I wish. And what Cindy's trying to get me to say is how crazy I get every 3 years. So every 3 years.
Only every 3, not on a day-to-day, right, Liz? It's only every 3 years.
Every 3 minutes, every 3 days, every 3 months, every 3 years. So every 3 years, we have to petition to have the American College review our trauma system. So we invite them in and they come in. And before they come, I am given what's called a PRQ or a pre-review questionnaire. The pre-review questionnaire is about, once it's filled out, 170 pages of
Is that
questions and
single-spaced?
answers.
Is
Huh?
that single-spaced or double-spaced? I
I
feel like it's single-spaced. It's a
kind of
really
I think
long
it is. Yeah.
It's a really
That's
long
how I would
It's a lot of
document.
info.
describe it.
But it basically asks me a lot of different questions. There's a section on how we work with EMS. There's a section of what do we do within the region to help support trauma? What do we, our injury prevention, there's a section on that, a section on our research, section of critical care, a section on orthopedic surgery, neurosurgery, rehab, et cetera, et cetera. So it basically looks at all the different elements of the trauma patient, every place that touches that trauma patient. And I'm asked to supply a lot of basic information. In this new version, I'm also asked to upload a lot of policies and guidelines and org charts and projects, articles that may have been published here. And basically with that pre-review questionnaire, the reviewers are able to look at that. They get it about a month before a visit, and they really get to know kind of our trauma center, kind of the skeleton of our trauma center. And then based on that PRQ, they come in and they meet with the trauma administration team and some of the clinical team. And they review that PRQ and ask us a lot of different questions to try to even get a better understanding on how we do things. They also will do a tour in which they go to all the areas a trauma patient would go to, the ER. They look at the ambulance bay, ECIC, PICU, surgical care, neuroscience, the OR, the PACU, blood bank, radiology. And they're going to ask people in those areas questions about how do we take care of trauma patients in your area. So let's say you're an ICU nurse. They may ask to speak with you. They may ask, how were you oriented to take care of a trauma patient? They may say, you're taking care of a child with intracranial pressure monitor and you have problems, who are you going to call? How are you going to get people to the bedside? They're really just looking to find out, is what we do in actuality what we say we do, and do all of our protocols, policies, and standards of practice all mesh in order for that trauma patient to do a good job. And so every 3 years, it gets a little, let's just say, busy, to where we want to make sure that we show the American College all the great things that we do. The other thing I want to highlight when they come is they're very focused on how we handle problems. They know that in any different type of care, not everything is perfect all the time. And we all know that, we see it all the time. They want to make sure that we identify when there is a problem in the care that we give our patients, whether we're not compliant with a guideline, or it took too long to get blood, or I don't know, the neurosurgery didn't call the OR and just showed up. And they want to see how we deal with that and how we make improvements so it won't happen to the next patient. So we do spend a lot of time talking about how to not only do service recovery, but to take our processes and kind of shore them up in order to make trauma care not air-proof, but as air-proof as we possibly can be.
How many verifications have you been through?
This will be my 6th.
Liz, how many have you been through?
You're right there.
Just about the same. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Liz, is this your first verification, not being like clinical? Because instead of like, you're on part of the trauma administration team now.
Right.
So is
No,
this
the last verification,
okay,
all 3 of us were a part of. Yeah. The last trauma verification, that's for sure.
Yeah.
2021. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been through 2 and they were really different. Before it was they always came in person, but
Right.
last year, not last year, but our last verification, it was all online. Are they going to do online again this year?
Yeah, so right now the American College Community of Trauma is looking at all re-verifications to be online. There is talk within the group that potentially every 3rd one may be in person again. But right now, that's just conversation. Where we live right now, we're expecting just virtual. And, Cindy, it's funny, you say both of yours were different. I've done 6 and every one of them have been different. And it all comes down to who your reviewers are.
Yeah.
And what they want to focus on and what they're interested in.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like everybody comes in like they're kind of like a dog with a bone. It's like, this is my bone and we're going to talk about my bone.
Yeah.
I'm more focused on my bone. I don't care about those other ones. But it's
the other thing to
interesting.
say is it's not like Joint Commission and Department of Health. The American College does not come in trying to find errors or trying to find things to trip you up. They truly come in and want to help you be better.
They
And
also
so if
aren't
they
looking at water bottles.
Yeah. So if they see something that's not quite right, they kind of talk you through it. And first of all, they talk you through it to make sure that they're truly understanding and you're communicating right. But then if it truly is a problem, they work to help you fix it. And know kind of where you're kind of going off the rails.
So it's not just the American College of Surgeons that verifies us as a trauma center.
Nope.
There is another entity. Oh, there he is. Okay. And that was Yogi. He's not the other entity. What's the other entity that verifies us as a trauma center, and why is that important?
We are also verified by the state of Maryland, or as you may hear it referred to as MIEMSS. MIEMSS also comes in. They come whenever the American College does. So we just have to do this once. We share the American College shares their paperwork. We meet everybody shares and gets along very well. But the reason it's so important for us to have Maryland come in is about 60% of our total trauma volume and our burn volume come from Maryland, whether that's Montgomery County, PG County, St. Mary's, Charles County. We get several from there. Washington
Frederick
County.
Too. I think Frederick too.
What's that?
Frederick
County. Yeah.
Howard.
Yeah. So we get a good chunk of Maryland that comes through here. And because of that, Maryland really feels strongly that they need to be part of our review process, which it's actually a very good idea. And some of the things in Maryland are more stringent than the American College of Surgeons. So it actually works to, I guess you could say it might benefit, but it also makes my life a little harder. But it works to the benefit of the patient because it does look at things a little more stringently. And probably the biggest difference between Maryland and the American College is how they look at nursing. Maryland looks a lot deeper at our nursing practice than the American College does.
I think is helpful for us as, as nurses to, I think it helps us have better rules and regulations. And it's, it's not just so physician focused because, our nurses, they're the ones at the bedside all of the time. And as much as I understand the pain of crossing all of the T's and dotting all of the I's, I appreciate their interest in the nursing practice. Liz, what do you think?
The trauma patients can be some of the sickest patients that nurses will take care of. Their injury course, their disease progression is often very unpredictable. So folks really have to stay on top of their game and understand that physiology, have competencies that again help them take care of the trauma patient and understand the trauma patient. So yeah, trauma nursing is very very intricate, very very important.
So Jen, you talked about all of these guidelines, and they're online and they're also in a book form. One thing I think that is,
the book is going away.
Oh, the book is going away. Well, one of my favorite thing about guidelines and stuff like that is I love a book. I love to hold the book and highlight and underline and all of that. And what I think is also kind of fun about it is they change the color every so often. So how many colors have you been through, Jen?
4.
Because it was purple, then green, then orange, and then gray? Or
no,
green?
I came in at gold, green, orange, gray.
Okay.
You guys want to describe what the book actually is?
Do you have the book? Can you hold one up? Even though most everybody is listening.
My book's at home.
Oh, hold on. Liz has got the book.
Do I get a prize?
Yeah, you do. You get the 50 Shades of Grey prize, which I think is a
Guys
lot of people
impressed. I
have.
know exactly where it was.
Yeah.
It's right at my fingertips.
Did they
So this
say?
is, again, yeah, this is the resources for optimal care of the injured patient. Again, the standards for trauma care. Again, that's
So
actually
you do get a gold star. So there's the so that is the book form of it. And do we have to buy them, or do they give them to us?
Oh, no, we have to buy those.
No, so everything we have to just pay for.
Oh, yeah.
So in that book, there is like a list of like key things. Now, these key things, Jen, are we benchmarked against ourselves, or are we benchmarked against other hospitals? Like, how does that work?
That's a really good question. And the answer is both. There are some benchmarks that are set through what's called TQIP, or Trauma Quality Improvement Program, which is a risk-adjusted benchmark. So I always love to tell nurses that you guys document, and your documentation is really important. Yet I remember being at the bedside and wondering if anybody ever read what I wrote down. And I can tell you from a trauma standpoint, yes, we do read what you write down. We have registrars that take the chart, and they are basically taking about 200 to 250 data elements and putting them in a national trauma registry. Some of those are first blood pressure, or how we're administering oxygen. When did they go to the OR? What time did they go from the ED to the ICU, or the ED to the floor? So a bunch of different metrics that they're pulling out. And so much of that we look at, and it goes into a report called our TQIP report. That looks at complications. It looks at how we follow solid organ injury guidelines, open fracture guidelines, and it compares us to other pediatric hospitals. So we can see with all the stuff we're reporting, how do we match up with these specific patient populations? So that gives us an idea, kind of big picture, where we live. Now, the other thing is we do a lot of benchmarking that the American College puts out there. For instance, you have to have attending trauma surgeon in the emergency department for a trauma stat attending within 15 minutes of the patient arriving. That's set by the American College. So we have to watch that and report on it. And if we have a problem, we have to show them we're doing something.
And if it's a rule with the ACS, it's a rule with MIEMSS.
Yes.
But if it's a
most
rule with
part.
MIEMSS, it's not necessarily a rule for the ACS, but it's a rule to us nonetheless.
Yes.
Okay.
Another example is if we have an emergent surgical case, it's emergent surgery for a trauma patient. That word emergent means they have to be in the operating room within less than 30 minutes.
What is emergent? What's an example of an emergent thing?
Emergent is a patient with a head injury that has an expanding epidural hematoma and they're not mentating well.
Now, what's urgent? What's the difference between emergent and urgent, and the time frames again?
Okay, for emergent, it is 30 minutes to the OR from the decision, the time the decision is made. For urgent, we have 120 minutes to get into the operating room.
So emergent is bad, and urgent is it's going to get bad.
It means that we don't want to sit around and just twiddle our thumbs. We can't wait till morning, put it that way.
It's not like spend the night in the hospital and we'll take you to the OR in the morning.
It's not the kid with the appendicitis who can wait 4 to 6 hours. It's the patient that has to get there within 2.
Okay. And Liz, what have you worked on a project with this too? That with head injuries and all of that?
Yeah. We actually one of our most recent QI projects was it took the span of greater than the last year, really looking at how to improve the care of patients with traumatic brain injury in the code room. And so it was actually a quilt project of one of our neurosurgery colleagues. So she had us all on her team, if you will, and we looked at, again, how we get those patients with severe TBI to the OR quickly. And really the first step of that project, it was really neat. The first step was identifying who those patients are and getting accurate GCS scores. So this was a project that, again, where here we are kind of focused on getting patients to the OR quickly, but had to really take a step back and say, well, first of all, how do we identify who those patients are? Because we know not everyone with a traumatic brain injury needs to go immediately to the OR.
Right.
So Cindy had the terrific idea of actually, teaching people and giving them resources as to how to calculate a GCS in pediatrics. We realized from a data collection that we're really good when a GCS is 3, and we're really good when a GCS is 15 in kids, but everything, all those nuances in between, what does it mean, for the infant or for the school-age child? How can we really accurately calculate that? Was something that we realized really needed some resource enhancements. So Cindy's brainchild was to create some wonderful videos that maybe you've seen online, definitely in the trauma app, on how to calculate the GCS in a pediatric patient. So that was kind of step 1 of this project. And then really with a series of other interventions, we kind of, as a group, came up with a consensus on the best steps and to get that patient, once they're determined to have a brain injury that needs emergent operative intervention, how to get them there quickly with several key steps.
And did we start this project because of what we found internally, or did the ACS identify that through that TQIP report? Well, how and why? Was it because somebody was like, hey, there might be a problem, or did we pick that up on our own internal QI?
Internal QI. There were a couple of cases with patients in the emergency department that prompted discussion. Those patient cases were taken to our peer review, which we can probably talk about in just a moment, what that is, that monthly meeting. But that project really stemmed out of specific patient cases where we saw that there was an opportunity for improvement.
And is that benchmarked with TQIP like that with all the other hospitals, Jen?
No, not the work we did with getting our patients to the OR, but it would hit the TQIP in a roundabout way because some of those kids would be emergent to OR, and that would hit TQIP.
Okay, and where do we stand nationally with that emergent to OR process?
We are due for a TQIP report in a month. So it's hard to say exactly where we are right now. For the most part, we're usually in one of the top 5 deciles, which means we actually do pretty good.
Okay. And that is against everybody else, all the other pediatric trauma centers. So and I think that's so important to note that not only did we discover it ourselves, but it's something that other hospitals know can be problematic. So it's on that TQIP report. So it's not just somebody being like, you need to do better. It's hey, this is a hard thing.
Yeah.
And we're all going to look at it.
There's some interesting things on the TQIP report too, the TQIP report looks at our complications. And so things that kind of affect nursing, it looks at skin injuries, whether they're C-collar related or just pressure related. And we are allowed to we compare ourselves with other hospitals there. Things like, obviously your CLAPSI, your CAUTI kind of stuff. But I'm trying to think, there's another one.
TE.
Which
BTE.
one? BTE, yeah. But there's things that, that we touch every day that we do look to see how do we compare. TQIP also compares how kids get injured, and it's interesting here at Children's National, we see a lot more ped struck than a lot of other hospitals because we are in such an urban area, and where most children's hospitals are in a city. If you look around the United States, a lot of those cities aren't near as much of a pedestrian city as we are. And so that actually gets really interesting too, where you look at, what is coming in all over, around the country versus what exactly are we seeing, and it helps us kind of do some focus.
The snowmobile injuries, we rarely, maybe once every 5 years do we have a snowmobile injury, but Montana, they had a lot. Idaho had quite a bit. Alaska had it's interesting, especially when you go to these other trauma conferences and you talk to everybody about like injury prevention, which is my gig, which I love, but everybody's like, we got to really focus on snowmobiles. And I was like, no, we don't.
I was in Wyoming in January and I was at their trauma center in Jackson Hole. And we actually had to end class early one day because there was an avalanche risk and allowed people to get home. And I was like, hold on. So then they gave me this, I got this whole lesson about avalanche and what to do and what the trauma center goes through when there's an avalanche. And I'm like, yeah, so I haven't worked on that at all.
Yeah, I was part of a meeting that they were discussing how to protect kids from hay holes. And I was like, what is a hay hole? But it's like in a barn, there's a hole where they put the hay and they throw the hay down the hay hole. And I was like, this is so random. And like, all these kids were falling through the hay hole. And I was like, yeah, we're not going to do that initiative either.
Now,
but
on the TQIP report, that would just go under fall.
Right. So we've talked a little bit about like the TQIP report and Liz, that your quilt project with the combined with neurosurgery, which I think is like so cool about our department that we do a lot of projects that are like just trauma related, but it's so rare when it's just trauma related because it always involves not one or two. It's most of the time it's a couple different specialties. And I remember on that one, I mean, there was a lot of us from many different parts involved in that, which I think is like, I think it's really cool. And I think that's why trauma is such like a fun place to work in and be in, because we get to know everybody and with all the common goal. Jen, do you want to talk a little bit about a couple things that are on the dashboard and that these things are, it's not on that like benchmark TQIP report, but it's something that we look at and the American College of Surgeons looks at in MIEMSS that would like specifically affect nursing?
You know, I'll kind of do a couple because a few of them are unit related. In the emergency department, in the code room, we look at time to intubation, and that's been an internal benchmark of ours just to improve efficiency, because the more efficient you are in the code room, the better your patient's going to do and the quicker you can identify injury. So we set a goal that decision to intubation will take less than 7 minutes. And this truly is multidisciplinary. You know, it took a lot of work several years ago to develop RSI guidelines for what drugs we're going to use. So it's not part of the discussion. It's just a known. There's a lot of nursing education for not only what those drugs are for trauma patients, which are different than their medical patients, as well as how to give RSI drugs. Anesthesia does our intubation, so they're down there and have to be aware. And it's something that we've looked at over the past several years. And it's fun. We started with a goal of less than 10 minutes, and now we're to a goal of less than 7 minutes. And we do hit it the majority of the time.
Which I think is like, it's really neat.
So great. Yeah.
Okay, so for fun, what are the 2 drugs that we always intubate trauma patients with?
We always intubate with etomidate as your sedation and succinylcholine as your paralytic. And that went through.
What do we tell our nurses and our pharmacists in the code room if we're about to intubate and somebody says, okay, let's go ahead and draw up some fentanyl, Versed, and rock? What do
I
we
usually say? I have etomidate and succinylcholine, and that's this is a trauma patient.
And they're already drawn up, and that 9 times out of 10 really helps.
We found that when we had standard drugs for intubation, it decreased time to intubation by 7 to 8 minutes.
It's a lot.
It's a lot of time when you can't breathe.
And as Cindy just said, they're drawn up ahead of time. So
yeah,
we just anticipate those needs. And then, yeah.
So that is one. Some of the other ones, we work with radiology and we're looking at how quickly we get second reads. The American College mandates you have a preliminary second read within 30 minutes of a child who's brought in from an outside hospital.
So Jen,
yes,
on the second reads,
yes,
when transport brings in a CD, because it's 2023 and we're carrying around CDs, if they bring in CDs, are they automatically put in? Like if you hand somebody a CD, does radiology automatically read it?
No, you actually have to put an order in. So you have to
And
put an order in for every different CT you want a second read. So if there is a head, abdomen, and a cervical spine, you would have to put 3 different orders in for 3 different second reads.
and any new or regularly scheduled NALs, that's a really good that are watching this, is an important thing to remember. Or even if you're a bedside PICU nurse and you're like, oh, they were at an outside hospital beforehand, but I only see that there's a second read of a chest x-ray, but you see a CD at the bedside for like a head CT, abdominal CT, that could be something you can bring up at round saying like, hey, did we want to order second reads? Because there's more films. It's good. And I would say 95% of the time, all that gets put in like right as the child like comes through the door, but sometimes they aren't. And sometimes they're missed because people think, oh, all the images are on a CD. If I put in just a second read on the chest x-ray, of course they'll read all of the other things on the CD. That is just, it's just not the way it happens.
Nope. Another one of our internal metrics that I actually like, and there is no benchmark. We kind of made it up. I remember talking to other hospitals when I made it up. I
don't even know what you're about to say. I'm like, what'd you make up?
I know, you're the word. We look at critical patients going from the code room to the PICU in less than 60 minutes, and that includes CT time. And 60 minutes was something I had a lot of conversation with some other trauma centers peds trauma centers around the country. And that's kind of what a lot of them are using also. And it doesn't mean that something bad's going to happen to us if we don't meet that 60 minutes. But these are kids. Critical means they're intubated, they're on inotropes.
That's not tracked by the ACS?
No, they have a bad burn. It makes us, if it takes more than 60 minutes to get them from the door to the PICU, that gives me good indication of drill down to figure out where inefficiencies are. And I think that's where Liz and I, and you too, Cindy, we've all spent a lot of time over a lot of years really trying to hone our program to remove inefficiencies. Now, have we removed them all? Absolutely not, because they keep throwing more at me.
Well, it's a new day. It's a new day and a new barrier. But
it really has been our goal. And I think that's a really neat internal metric that we use that's really driven a lot of change.
And I mean, it could be because if we have a patient, like one of the things that the ACS does and MIEMSS are really interested in is if we have a trauma bed that can accept a PICU patient is like quickly. So if there's ever a time that isn't available and that affects that one time, so it can be considered that they do track it, but
they don't make me pull a report to see compliance, but I usually do show it to them because I think it really does tell part of our story on how we decide what it is we're looking at. You know, if I have a kid that's in CT scanner for 45 minutes for 2 scans, well, what happened in there?
Have we had any recent delays in that timing since our CT is now outside?
Yes.
Oh, womp womp.
But I mean, again, it's this unique perspective into a whole hospital system when you're, looking at it in the eyes of the trauma patient, right? What other patient is going to touch so many different parts of the hospital and then really kind of open up the entire hospital's eyes to the system in general. So I think it's just
I ran into Dr. Delaney in the cafeteria just a few minutes before we got here online, and we were just talking about massive blood transfusion and the fact that we're introducing O positive downstairs in the emergency department. And one of the things she said, it really struck me. She was like, people have to realize that when you launch a massive blood transfusion protocol, that is the sickest kid in the building. Because anybody, I speak to it with trauma, it can be a lot of other different things, but trauma is one of the biggest users of MBTP, but it really puts a perspective on what it is you're doing and the rules we're going to follow and the efficiencies and knowledge you have to have, because these kids truly are getting these massive blood transfusions, because if they don't, they're going to die in a few minutes.
Right.
And it was just a neat conversation that she and I had.
And I think that is it's a sobering thought, but it's also like something to think of. If you're in the room and you're the nurse taking care of a patient that's getting the MBTP, like you literally have the sickest patient in the hospital at that moment. And, I think sometimes we forget that and we don't, like there is urgency in that.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons with MBTP, as well as a lot of our other things that we do in trauma and burn, like fluid resuscitation, different things. We've really pulled nursing staff into some of the medical decision making, not that they're making the decision, but nurses here have a lot of power in the power of suggestion, I guess. Something's
Yeah,
going
but
wrong with your patient and you go, how about massive blood transfusion? Or would you like a little hypertonic saline? Or how about we put an IO in since I can't get this IV?
or like, let's stop giving fluid, they're hemorrhaging, let's try blood in the front.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's some of the other neat things that we've got to do in these positions is really pull nursing in. And we found that whenever we do, it does make a difference with our metrics.
And it makes it better. It makes it better. I think that nurses as a team have, and it can be singular, but as a team can have a good voice. And I honestly, I think that our hospital, it's not the only one where nurses have a voice, but I think our nurses in our hospital have more of a voice than other places.
And it's one of those things when the ACS and MIEMSS are here, and they'll be here about a year from now. It's one of the things I love with the tour is that's something that they're really able to get as they tour and they talk to staff, both nursing and medicine, is they really get the fact that nursing here is pulled into a lot of decision making and they definitely have a voice at the bedside in which people listen to.
And I think that's a good thing for anybody that's listening to this, that if anybody from the ACS ever wants to ask you a question, it's going to be an interesting question. And it's not like about your water bottle. And it's always meant to make our program stronger. I don't think there's anything you could say that they'd be like, all right, well, you're not a trauma center anymore because we talked to this one nurse who said that. It's really more about like our time to shine and our time to like show them what we do as a group. I think it's more of a show and tell rather than like other things. Nobody's nitpicking here.
I think that's a good thing to bring up, Cindy, is if they ever do ask you a question, by the time we get to the tour, they have done all of our chart reviews. They have looked through our PRQ. If we have any dirty laundry, they have already found it. So by the time they talk to you at the bedside, they're just looking for your story.
Yeah.
And how it is you take care of a trauma patient. So it can be nothing but positive at that point.
And like, do you know where your resources are and are you supported and all of that? And God, I hope you feel supported, but it really is like the questions I've seen them ask, they're softballs.
Yeah.
And it really is like your time to shine and your time to like say like, hey, like this is what it's like. And like it's all gone like incredibly well in the past. So don't ever be nervous if a reviewer asks you.
And with that, I'll put in the plug to make sure you get the trauma app. It's CN Trauma. Put it on your phone. It's
yeah,
the gold standard on all of the updated stuff that trauma does with resources as well as guidelines and protocols.
And if you do download the app, you won't be able to use it right away. You have to register. So it can take up to 24 to 48 hours to be approved, but you will be approved. It just in order. So like our personal cell phone numbers aren't going out to anybody who is not in our hospital. That's why you have to be approved. So make sure when you register with your children's email. Liz,
yeah,
can you are there any other projects that you've worked on that like affected our dashboard that you found like particularly interesting?
Well, certainly all of the work in regards to blood administration has been a lot of fun, and it's just amazing to see those numbers, the door to blood administration time really come down, and then Jen's taken it to a whole. The neat thing is how these projects really, I'll say snowball, but really you gain all of this momentum, and then they just really seem to take on a life of their own. So Jen has named kind of the next stage of the work with time to blood and door to blood and blood product administration as really 2.0. It's the next step. It's not just getting it in there quickly. It has to be a balanced transfusion, and again, having the right products in the code bay and more expansive products in the code base. So that's really fun. It's really neat to again see kind of one little metric that you're looking at trying to change, and then really how that work just continues to flourish. So that's been
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
A
if
lot of
people
fun.
don't know it, we have a wonderful blood bank. Absolutely wonderful blood bank. I wouldn't have said that 10 years ago, just FYI.
Speaking of blood, and for, I don't know, and if you're in the ER, you know this, but what does our ER have, Jen, that not every ER has?
A refrigerator.
Yes. And how long have we had the refrigerator? It's like 2 years.
2 years, 3 years?
I don't know. I took a picture of you standing next to it when we got it because you're
Yeah,
very
I have it
agitated.
all in a timeline.
Yeah, it's all in a
of
fun.
everything.
Yeah, it's all in a.
And
But ask me how long it took me to get that
that
refrigerator.
was my next question. So the fact that we have a refrigerator and we have blood and FFP in it,
Mhm.
Took me 10 years to get it.
so
I've been
10
asking
years in
for
the
10
making.
years.
And the only other place that has blood readily on hand other than the blood bank is the CI.
Yep.
So the fact that we have blood on hand ready and available at all times in the code room, that's a huge step. And we did all of that through the dashboard process. And you know, it all comes together for like us being a level 1 trauma hospital and always trying to like up our own game.
Okay, I know the date.
Oh, Liz has the date. Okay, so today is
Was it
September
August?
26th,
It was August. It was
August
August.
21.
19?
August 19th.
We've had it for 4 years. We've had the blood refrigerator for 4
Yeah.
years.
It was
Wow.
pre-pandemic.
Blood Fridge Live, NAO responsibility. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
Yeah.
How long have we had the Belmont?
A year?
Do you
Ish.
know? Is that on your slide?
Yeah.
The
Let me see.
Belmont?
Hold on. I have it all.
Now I'm
Belmont.
interested.
That was.
And
It's,
while
I
Liz is
imagine.
looking it up, Jen, you explain what the Belmont is and what it replaced.
The Belmont, our rapid blood infuser, we can put blood or plasma or a crystalloid on that machine. And if your access is big enough, it can infuse in a minute or two.
Oh yeah.
Even if you have a 24 gauge, we can get a unit of blood in pretty faster than what you can push it.
Yeah,
And
I think
it
with
administers it warm.
with a 24, I think the fastest you would probably be able to get it is like 50 mils a minute, but that's still a lot of mils a minute.
Well, and the
Are there
beauty of
videos?
it is it watches the pressure of the IV line. So if you're giving something IV push, you're using a lot of pressure and you could do damage to the vessel. But the Belmont won't let you get over a pressure of 300. And then it plays with your rate in order to keep it at a lower pressure. And so it's safer. So you get rapid fluid administration that's warm and safe for the vein. It's beautiful.
It
And it
really
replaced
is.
the old level 1s, which were an absolute nightmare.
Yeah. And you know what, now that we're talking about that and we're coming like to a close, I will link how to use the Belmont to this video because we made an educational video of like all of the things of the Belmont. So if you haven't used the Belmont recently, or if you need a refresher, like this video, it is 15 minutes long, but it tells you every single thing that could go wrong and right with the Belmont. So, you know, you don't get hours for watching it, but boy, I think you'd feel better the next time you're using the Belmont if you have watched the video.
And all these videos we talked about are also in your trauma app. Both the GCS video, the Belmont video, your
Is the 15-minute
videos.
Is the 15-minute video on that app?
The
What's the
2-minute one
2-minute?
is, we're still working on getting the 15-minute, but it will be.
Well, I'm gonna link the 15-minute
Yes.
one after this one.
But-
So
Yeah. All our videos are within on your fingertips at your phone.
all right.
Yeah.
So now that we're coming to a close, Liz, what's your favorite part about being working in a level 1 trauma hospital?
Again, I think the privilege, if you're working in a trauma department, of having that collaboration with essentially every unit in the hospital, whether it's the emergency department, the blood bank, the lab, radiology. It's such a privilege to really collaborate with all of those subspecialists. So yeah, I think, yeah, again, just well, and also networking. You know, we're all members of the Pediatric Trauma Society, and it's it's really a small group of us, those who do pediatric trauma, but certainly a very dedicated group of professionals, and collaboration is incredible as well. So everyone kind of working to that same goal of taking care of the injured child. I also just want to say, we did bring the Belmont in at the end of September, so we can say happy birthday, Belmont, at this point.
Oh, for a year. Oh, it is happy birthday, Belmont.
Happy birthday,
I
Belmont.
should send that out on email.
We should. Like, here, we even made a video to celebrate the Belmont's birthday.
You laugh. Let's do that.
We should. Was like, did you know it was the Belmont's birthday?
Yeah, you should.
We should get out a cupcake and bring it to the Belmont and take
we could look at how many times it's been used, how quickly the blood got in, all sorts of fun stuff.
Yeah, we could do a little like fact sheet about like how many times we've used the Belmont since it came. Oh,
we know how to have fun, huh?
I know. It's like a birthday party for the Belmont. Hey man, I love the Belmont. I wish I had one at my house. It's amazing. I don't know what I'd use it for, but it's so great.
Oh, it's been a game changer.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And Jen, what's one thing that you would want any nurse listening to this to take with them about working for a level 1 pediatric trauma center or an ACS verification with MIEMSS? Like, what's your major take home?
I think, and I hope that we gave a little bit of this throughout this talk, is that nurses have a voice, and that the trauma service is always looking at how to improve care. And part of that is hearing from you guys. We are lucky enough to have video in the ED, and I can, play God and watch the video. But that doesn't even give you the whole picture. And I don't have video every place else. So for those of you in the PACU and the OR and the PICU and surgical care, neuroscience, main ED even, let us know if there's stuff that could be better. If there's stuff that could be improved, or if you want to take part in working on a project with the trauma team, we would love to have bedside nurse involvement in doing some of our improvements. Some of our best work we've done was because we had bedside nurses that were part of our team.
Absolutely. I totally agree. All right. Well, with that, we will sign off and watch that Belmont video because it's worth it.